Welcome to the Masari Podcast, where we discuss issues of personal finance, investment, and entrepreneurship. Thank you for joining once again in this episode. Please don't forget to hit the like button and the subscribe button. After you listen to this, please do comment, share with your buddies, let us know what you think. Yesterday, we did have a very interesting day, a highly anticipated day. Kind of reminds me of the Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder fight in 2021. It was 2021, I believe. That was like the third fight of the trilogy. There was just so much hype around that. So much talk around how both fighters are really preparing. In the news, you did hear a bit of information on what techniques they're applying in their training, how they're going to adjust their game plan for the following fight. There's just so much hype around it, and when it happened, people who were watching it were actually nervous by watching it. It was so tense and all that. And the same thing applies for the United States. I think the general sentiment, not only inside the United States, but at least from a lot of people that I do know that live outside the United States, there is a sentiment that this election is really going to define the future of the country. There is a sentiment that the United States is sort of like in decline for political and economic reasons, geopolitical reasons too, the relationships with a lot of the countries worldwide. We have been seeing a trend of, I wouldn't even call it a trend, maybe like a sentiment of that there is a de-dollarizing trend, that the dollar could lose the influence and the global position as the world reserve currency, and the leadership for the country is really going to define the future. This is a very pivotal moment. So there was a presidential debate, and I must admit that the left side of my brain tends to be the strongest. I like to look at things very logically. When it comes to debates like this, it's very difficult to define who won, because on one hand, the media is going to be pushing one narrative. We do know that media are controlled or owned by people who are inclined to one party versus the other. Some media is on the left while some media is on the right. So there's just too much subjectivity on that. But one thing that I have seen is that statistically, it is proven that most of the people were not swayed either to the right or to the left, right? So, in other words, people were not really swayed more towards one candidate than the other, prior to what their standing was before. I think I did see a stat that plus minus 96% of the people that watched it said that it didn't really change their stance or their voting stance, right? So that didn't really make a difference. And the general perception was that this presidential debate was intended to target independent votes in the United States. So only time is going to tell. And just by the way that the electoral system works, it's not purely based on popular votes anyways. There is the electoral college thing, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. The left side of my brain works more. I'm just a numbers person. It's kind of different when you're talking about the results of an actual game, right? Or in the context of boxing, it's kind of different when, somebody wins or loses by knockout. I mean, the person just got knocked out cold, no matter how much you love that boxer. I was really shocked about a decade ago. I think Manny Pacquiao was knocked out. I think it was by Bivol. I can't remember if it was Bivol or someone else, or Maidan, I can't remember. I mean, he was knocked out cold. And we know that Manny Pacquiao has a huge fan base, and watching that must have been really devastating to see. Same thing with the trilogy between Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, right? There was a trilogy. In the first fight, there was a split decision, and it was based on points. But in fight number 2 and 3, you could see that Deontay Wilder was just getting beat up. That was pretty much the peak of Tyson Fury. He'd come out from his hiatus, and when he got back, he eventually got into top shape and fight number 2 and number 3, and he just knocked the living you-know-what out of the other guy, right? Out of Deontay Wilder. Now, with presidential debates, it's kind of different, It's very subjective. Nowadays, it's not just about being presidential and factual. It's about getting in your opponent's skin. It's about hitting their ego. It's about trying to trigger reactions that are emotional. It's about you having control. It's about you trying to trigger and bait your opponent to say things that are off script, that are going to take their focus away from issues that are in line with the concerns of the people. It's about posing for memes because it's a social media era. It's just mad. It's just like a soap opera, to be honest. And Just not a very pleasant thing to watch, especially in a situation where there's so many critical issues in the country. And, if you're a serious voter, you want someone that you really have the confidence that is going to come in and sort out those issues and, really has a solid plan that's going to take the country forward. And when it's based on other things, it's just really frustrating, especially the way the younger generation tends to think. It's not a knock on Gen Zs, but I have seen stats, I have seen videos on what exactly is driving people's voting decisions, right? So here's my concern. It is a concern, and I would say it is a disappointment, right? On one hand, in the previous episodes, I have been talking about some of the issues that I believe are pivotal for the future of the United States and some of the issues that pose a significant threat, if I may say, to the country. So first of all, let me start by highlighting the ranking of important issues of U.S. voters according to statistics, right? So these statistics are from Statista, right? And that's where I do get quite a lot of economic data. And some of the economic data that I share here on this podcast come from this site, right? So according to this, the number one issue in the United States for U.S. voters is inflation and prices. So 25% of the selected people, well, voters in this case, did say so. Immigration ranks at number 2 at 11%. Healthcare, which is access to healthcare, which is a fair issue, ranks at number 10. Jobs and the economy ranks at number 4 at 10%. Sorry, I think I said healthcare ranks at number 10. Healthcare ranks at number 3 at 10%. Sorry to go back and forth. Abortion is at number 5 with 8%. Climate change and the environment is number 6 rather, at 7%. Civil rights, number 8 at 6%, and national security, 5%, right? And when you look at this, you find that for foreign policy, I can't even see where it's ranking. It's probably like number 12 or something. Foreign policy is only the top concern of 2% of the voters. So that was really concerning. Now, when I compare the ranking of the voters' concerns to what I believe are the biggest threats to the United States, this is extremely concerning because when you look at presidential debates, you're going to have moderators, right? As much as people can argue that some of these moderators are inclined to one party versus the other and they have their biases because they work for networks that are owned by people of a particular party. At the end of the day, the questions that they asked are going to be related to issues that are top ranking concerns in the country. So I have been highlighting a lot of concern around, number 1, the public debt. Number 2, the fiscal deficit in the United States. I've been highlighting, number 3, the risk of the dollar losing influence worldwide and the dollar losing its position as a world reserve currency and the economic consequence of that happening, right? I have been discussing about that quite a lot in the last few episodes, and it was quite sad to see that these issues were not touched on at all. Right. I did see in the debate that rightfully so, inflation was spoken about, immigration was spoken about. There were some viral, memes about the whole comment on people eating cats and dogs. But I did also fact check and I did see that it is true. There are Haitian illegal immigrants that have been eating people's cats and dogs, but it was quite a hilarious example. There were debates around the issues of healthcare, jobs, and the economy, but there was nothing said about the number one issue in the country, right? So what is the consequence of, the fiscal situation in the United States? Going back to 1944, that was the year when the Bretton Woods Agreement did happen. In 1971, former President Richard Nixon, who has passed away, did announce that the United States will no longer be according to the gold standard, right? So that did allow the United States to print money, right? Because prior to that, the amount of dollar notes they had in the market was directly equivalent to the amount of gold that the economy possessed, right? So now when you detach gold from the US dollar, that does mean that the amount of dollars in the economy has nothing to do with the amount of gold in the economy. So as a result, that did allow for money printing and quantitative easing whenever that was necessary. So what ends up happening is that the country is consistently in deficit. We have seen that, the last time that the country was in fiscal surplus was in 2001. I was like 14 years old at the time. I can't remember if it was 2000 or 2001 actually, but I think the last time I used to hear about the whole deficit thing was when I was in high school. Actually, my very early days in high school. I do believe that the Clinton administration was the last one that kind of left the country in a very healthy situation fiscally. And ever since, we've seen the deficit just widen. I have read a book a couple of years ago. I think it's called The Great Economic Earthquake, something like that. And that book was written around 1990, 91, or 92. It was written around the time when George Bush was the president of the United States. And it was pretty much criticizing Democrats. And it was alluding to Democrats being responsible for the widening of the fiscal deficit due to the entitlements and a lot of the social programs that come with expenses, because, that's what they do in order to get votes. While it was arguing that Republicans are more rational with fiscal spending. But when we look back to the credit of the Democrats, that theory is proven to not be true. The last time the country was in fiscal surplus, it was actually a Democratic president, to their credit, who did balance the books. But over time, we've seen that both Democratic and Republican presidents have been responsible for the widening of the deficit. I, at some point, did hold to that view, but then when I sat down and I looked at the situation, I kind of changed my opinion. So basically, the economy is going to consistently be in a situation where it's consuming more than it produces. It's consistently in deficit. In previous episodes, I have given the analogy of the guy who owns $10,000 a month but has expenses of $12,000 a month. And every month, while his income is growing, or rather every year, the spending is growing more than the income is growing. So the deficit is consistently increasing. And he needs to consistently be in debt in order to sustain that. Right now, the debt is really getting to levels that are really unsustainable. In recent years, we've seen debt to GDP at record levels in the United States. We're seeing that the debt servicing per annum is reaching $1 trillion. The public debt is $35.3 trillion. I remember in the previous episode, someone actually dropped a comment and said, Mr. Musari, you should estimate that in the next couple of years, right? The public debt's going to grow by $1 trillion every 80 days on average for the next couple of years. That's how we need to forecast it, because it's just been growing out of control, and it's really scary. So it's really concerning to see all these things playing out and for these things not to be touched. I mean, even military spending is forecast to increase from $782 billion last year to $882 billion. In my conversations with people around these issues, I have been questioning the impact of the fiscal proposals on both sides. And on the Democratic side, I did highlight how the proposals that have been made by Kamala Harris do cost plus minus $169 billion. I have been asking people the rhetorical question of, where is that money going to come from? Where are you going to get the money to fund that, right? On Trump's side, he did promise to cut some taxes. He did promise to cut back on spending, for example, in schools and stuff. He did also promise to create a task force to control the fiscal spending in the United States. And, the question still remains is, how feasible is that going to be? Because, cutting back on fiscal spending might imply cutting back on entitlements. Who knows? Who knows exactly what he's going to prioritize? It's probably going to hurt, a certain group of people. Some of these spending programs are designed to benefit a certain class of people. We do also know that economically, fiscal spending is one of the variables that stimulates economic growth. Looking at the, recession situation in the United States, looking at the downward revision that we have seen on job creation statistics, there is a need for the economic activity to be stimulated. And if you cut back on spending, it's really going to affect that. I was really, really disappointed that a lot of these pivotal issues were not discussed. They didn't discuss the other big elephant in the room, that is the U.S. dollar being attacked, the whole de-dollarization issue. We did discuss how after the Russia-Ukraine situation in 2022, after the United States sanctioned Russia, in response to that, Russia and the Eastern allies in China and the BRICS countries and other new BRICS members are taking measures to shift their global trade away from the U.S. dollar to reduce the U.S. dollar's position as a world reserve currency. I was very disappointed that this issue was not touched on in the debate. It's also very disappointing to see that statistically, issues such as the fiscal situation in the United States, which only represents what I think. Let me just look back at the numbers. Give me just a second. Please bear with me. The fiscal conditions of the United States represents, in fact, it barely represents a significant portion. Oh, yeah, it represents 4% of the voters concerned, right? National security represents 5%, and that's another issue that I'm going to get to. Now, the dollarization issue, I'll probably consider that or classify that as part of foreign policy, because dollarization has to do with a lot of the other countries around the world trying to push away from the dollar in global trade. That represents only 2%. But foreign policy is extremely important to the future of the country because, the president that comes in January 2025 is going to have to play a very big role in making sure that the foreign policy of the country is held together in order to ensure that the country is going in a very healthy and sustainable direction, right? And that was not touched on. Fortunately, I have seen that according to Atlantic Council does have a sort of like a dollar dominance watch. It shows that the United States still represents between 58 and 59% of the world reserve currency. It also shows that the United States dollar is still involved in 88% of global forex transactions. That's quite significant, but we don't know how long that's going to hold on. On one hand, to be fair, I have seen that former President Donald Trump in his rallies and campaigns and in his proposals has been proposing a plan to protect the U.S. dollar, but I haven't seen that from the other candidate. So the biggest concern and biggest disappointment is not only the fact that the moderators didn't raise that issue, because at the end of the day, the moderators, to be fair, are doing their job. They're raising issues that statistically are a top concern of the voters. I'm very disappointed in the voters of this country, period. I don't think the voters are focusing on the biggest issues. I don't think the voters are focusing on the elephants in the room that could potentially collapse the economy. I don't think so. I really don't think so. I think there are a lot of people on YouTube that are preparing really good content, talking about, the fiscal situation, talking about the public debt situation, how unsustainable it is, how that could potentially cause a crash in the economy. They are talking about the whole de-dollarization issue and how that can hurt the U.S. dollar. And Trump has highlighted that, but statistically, it's just really disappointing to see that it's not a top concern of the people. So I just hope that if you're listening to this, that could be something that you'll consider in your voting choice, because at the end of the day, it's not about me swaying people on the right or towards the left. It's about us making a sensible decision that's the best for the country. I do respect the fact that some people are one-issue voters. I know people who vote based on the issue of abortion. I know people who are primarily concerned about the economy. I know a bunch of people who are primarily concerned about the geopolitical position of the United States globally. Some people are concerned about the immigration situation, which is very pivotal, because obviously that needs to be managed properly in order for the situation to remain sustainable. Inflation and prices is something that directly affects our pocket. Obviously, we got to be concerned about that, but it's really important to look at other issues that are going to hold the country. There's no use focusing on something like abortion or focusing on something like, I won't even say civil rights. That's also a very sensitive one. But you're going to support a party because they're for abortion, but when you look at their policies, they're likely to put America in a very disfavorable situation worldwide. I'm not sure about that. But anyways, that's just my 2 cents. So let me know what you think. Please do hit the like button and subscribe. Do drop a comment. Let us know your thoughts, and see you in the next episode. Peace and God bless.
Behold, if he slay me, yet would I trust in him. But I will defend my own ways before him. This also should be my salvation, that a profane man should not come before his face. Sometimes I get confused, my life don't make no sense. I'm facing all these trials, like this ain't got no end. My feet are getting weary, can't raise my hands up. Lord, I think I had enough, feeling like I'm handcuffed and so stuck. What did I do? Life is looking so tough. I'm crying out like help me out. They're staring back like so what? I've been at this for so long, but by your grace I hold on. I just gotta keep on pressing on and be strong. strong, but I'ma cleave on till I pass away. I was made in Imago Day, they call me crazy, say what they wanna say. You would never leave me, no forsake me. I'ma take a word for when people still hating. I hear voices telling me I won't make it. I wanna walk the walk, I can't afford to fake it. I'ma still praise you, woman, everything, and I gotta stay committed like a wedding ring.
I know you walking it off for good. Help me to trust like I know I should. You're always not mine and your higher source. I just wanna
sharing, although my life ain't rosy, I get no sleep when I think about how life could be more cozy. I'm facing dark days, trying to cope with all the pain. I'm feeling beat down and knocked out like I was Sugar Shane, but I'ma go hard until I pass away. I got a lot of scars, but I call again. I rejoice in my suffering all the way. I feel like a broken down piece of clay. I feel abandoned, but I know it's not true. Life going wrong, but I know it's not you. Everything that your word says, I'ma still do. I'ma trust you, even if I got no clue what's going on with me. I got 100 questions in my head, silly. Got 99 problems, but I serve a big God. Nobody can stop him. I brag about him so hard, even when I feel low. God got me living large, no matter the hot flow. I'ma never go soft. I'ma hold on to the cross. I'ma cleave on. I'ma press on for eternity headlong. I lift up my eyes into the mountains. From where comes my help? My help comes from Jehovah, who made the heavens and earth. He will not suffer your feet to be moved. He that keeps you will never slumber.
I know you're walking it off for good. Help me to trust like I know I should. You're always not mine.